Do you have a loud boom sound, during the jump scare, or do you let, just the diegetic noise work, or, is it too cheap? Is it not cheap enough? Or, there's so many delicate balances there.
Hello, and welcome to Cut to Reveal. Today's episode is a fun one. My name is Peter, and I'm here with my co-host Ricky. Ricky, how are you doing? What are we doing today?
So today we are talking with Alex Familian, who edited this short body horror movie called Appendage that is airing on Hulu, or got to air on Hulu, and has been accepted into Sundance. It was a great interview. We laughed a lot. There was a twist in which we were talking about the relationship between him and the director, which we availed something that we did not expect, which was a nice surprise and very funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great talking to Alex. One of those interviews where you just start getting into the groove of talking with somebody and you're like, this is really easy, and we could talk with you for much longer.
Definitely, we're gonna revisit and probably interview him and the director.
Yeah.
One day again. That would be fun. They're having some cool stuff coming on. Probably they will do a feature together. So that's something that if they do, I'm pretty sure we'll have them on the show again. And by the way, the short Appendage is only 5 minutes long. So I encourage that everyone who listens to it, just, type in Appendage short film in YouTube and have a look, have a watch, because it's a good one. It's a fun one, especially for creatives, I think.
Yeah, it's really fun. We'll put a link in the description. In the description, so you can look at it. So
yeah, both on podcast audio form and on YouTube, of course.
Yeah. So without further ado, here's our interview with Alex Familian.
Let's roll the tape. Really, really happy to have you here. Thank you for spending time with us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And if you could give us a bit context, about your editing and filmmaking journey so far.
I was born in Los Angeles, but I grew up in Las Vegas, and just started doing film from a young age with like a high-8 camera and messing around. I think I didn't even know what film editing was. You just like record, and then you record the scene, and then you pause it, and then you do the next scene kind of thing. And somewhere along the line, I found out about Sony Vegas and got really into film editing from like a young age, and like CGI and like computer animation. And I was doing a lot of stuff with the video game Counter-Strike. There was like a pretty big community of people doing skins online, like custom skins, and like that was like my passion. And from there, I moved back to Los Angeles for high school, and I was lucky enough that my school had a film program. And so I sort of learned a little bit about filmmaking and got to make a couple movies in high school, which was really cool, like stuff on like DV camera, but it was still, it was taught by a former USC student who went to film school. And so that was a really cool experience, and working with my friends on that. And then eventually I went to film school in New York and studied, you couldn't really have a concentration, but I was doing a lot of editing, a little bit of directing and writing and visual effects. And then, right after school, kind of started doing a lot of corporate videos and music videos through people that I just graduated with. A couple people got really into music video directing. I was trying to kind of get into music video directing, and I ended up doing a lot of like live music videos. And then people that I graduated with were hiring me to do editing and visual effects. Like it was just sort of a niche that I found. I've always been really comfortable with computers, and post-production is like my favorite part of filmmaking. And so it kind of got started there. And then I guess I started working with a bunch of people I graduated with and other people out in LA. And I ended up meeting my wife, Anna, who was the director of Appendage, that played at Sundance, through a mutual cinematographer friend that I went to high school with, and that he went to USC with Anna. And so he introduced us, and Anna ended up hiring me to do visual effects on one of her movies. And we've been collaborating ever since, and obviously been together ever since. That was like 6 years ago now. But yeah,
Wow.
I do a lot of editing and visual effects now and stuff like that. But we have like a cool little community out here in LA where we're all working together, and it's really nice.
That's fantastic. I mean,
That's
because
cool.
we were looking up and I was going through your IMDb and I was like, oh man, he's worked with Anna a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then it turns
Yeah.
out the twist is that you guys
Oh.
are married.
Yeah, that certainly helps. It certainly helps. Before we were, this is a funny story, but when she first hired me to do visual effects on her short film Shorty, I was like, shit, I really want to ask her out, but I don't, she's a director. This is weird. Like, I'm just not going to even do that. And then
I'm gonna be a professional.
I wanted to be as professional as possible and really respect her and everything. And so I think after we wrapped the movie, she hit me up and was like, hey, can you teach me visual effects? And I was like, oh shit, like this is a great opportunity. And then I ended up actually hiring her to edit music or a live music video that I directed, and then it just kept we just kept working together,
That's great.
which was cool.
What a story.
Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah. It's cool, and we have very similar taste when it comes to like movies and music and all that stuff, and so it's a really nice collaboration. And I can't say that any collaboration, it always takes work, and you learn, how to communicate better and all that fun stuff. But, we do have a really, we go together really well in our personal lives and our professional lives, which is really great.
We can
Yeah.
see the appendage in the back.
Oh yeah. For all of these, we've been trying to include the little appendage back there. It's pretty cool. So there's like two of them. I know that this is an audio podcast, so I don't know. This is the
Actually, it's both. So it's a
oh,
YouTube
okay,
as well.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of two appendages that were made for the movie. This one is like a hand puppet, so you could put your hand in it and like make the mouth move. And then there's another one that's robotic, and you can use like a remote control and control the eyes
Wow.
blinking and the mouth moving all remotely.
That's
Which is really
fantastic.
cool. Yeah.
I've heard that you actually enhanced that footage with eyeballs movement as well.
Yeah. So because I do a lot of visual effects, I've been using, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like After Effects and the roto brush and all that fun stuff. But like the roto brush nowadays, it's like so fast. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy good.
It's amazing, and the accuracy is really good. So for every time the appendage showed up, I just rotoed the eyes out because these eyes are great, but they look a little lifeless. Like and so we took photos of the actual actress's eyes and then mapped them out in Photoshop, and then had them basically put onto like 3D spheres inside After Effects, and then you put like a null object to the sphere so you can have it look any way. And it was actually a lot simpler than I would have ever imagined, which is cool. And it's crazy that we can just do that. It all happened in this room, it's just right at a personal computer. It's like so crazy.
Yeah.
It gives it so much life,
It
Yeah,
is.
and it's
It
nice
is.
when with marrying the practical effects with like modern day visual effects is also fun, because I feel like people either go one way or the other, and it's a nice nice balance, I think.
But how about the baby appendage? Because I didn't see that puppet. So was it a puppet as well, or was it CGI?
That was a puppet. I think
puppet as well.
the special effects house that we work with had already made that for another movie, and then they kind of repurposed it for our movie, which was cool. But that one was like controlled. I don't understand physics, but it was somehow controlled. There was no electronics, but it was controlled with like strings, and certain strings would like move certain parts of it. And I don't know, the puppeteers are like, those guys are on like a whole other level. Or it's
That's
Amber
crazy.
and her partner Jim, and yeah, they just did such a good job.
Crazy.
But yeah, have you guys worked with practical effects before? I mean, it's crazy.
No,
I
not on
worked-
that level.
Yeah, no, I worked on about 4 or 5 years ago. I worked on a low-budget horror film in Colorado called Hoax about, spoiler alert, Bigfoot, and there was a bunch of practical effects on that, including like somebody had actually created a Bigfoot suit that left a little to be desired, unfortunately. But yeah, that was about it. And then, but with like squibs and all that type of stuff, it was really interesting to be on set for that, because with that production, I was the assistant editor in the DIT, and so I got to be on the set because initially they wanted the editor on the set, but he was doing other things. So they basically put me there, and we were like up in like the boonies in Colorado, so like half an hour away from any civilization, up a mountain and whatever. So I was going up and running cards and whatnot. So when you're just a DIT that's essentially just sitting in a cabin waiting for cards, I was like, I'm not gonna sit here. I'm gonna go up on set and like watch what's happening.
See the action.
Yeah, see the action. So there was a lot of that, where fake blood and monster effects and whatnot. But I mean, it was nothing as animatronic as actually the face of the beast was animatronic.
Nice.
But it wasn't. I would say that your appendage is probably better than the effects that they use with him. And even though it was like nice and like pretty awesome, like there was a lot of technology involved in it. I don't think unfortunately, it wasn't as effective as it could have been. But that's the gamble that you pay when you're just like, we trust you that you're gonna do it, and then you come back with like a full thing. And they're like, okay, I guess we're gonna use this now.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. Anna has worked with these guys. They're Amber Marie is like the head creature person that we worked with, and they've been working together for like 10 years on different music videos and little things like the movie we did, Sienna Bird, that I also produced. It's about a woman who has trichotillomania, which is like an OCD type of disorder where you like might pick out your hair when you're feeling a certain way. And so they designed like an entire wig to go on the actress that she could pull out the hair, and it looked like her real hair. And
oh, wow.
I don't know, it's just like a crazy use of practical effects that I never even would have imagined. Like there were certain, like it was a real wig, and then there were certain parts of the wig that she designed so that the hairs could really easily come out. And it's like body horror, it makes you feel crazy seeing it, but it's really effective.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And yeah, so for this project, we immediately went to them, and it was so much prep, and it was a lot of prep with them to make sure that everybody, was on the same page, and it would be ready in time for the shoot, which was, a huge, they really pulled it together in like the most amazing way, which was cool.
Yeah, it was really effective. I mean, even with how you were talking about before with kind of the marriage of practical effects and digital effects, and making that look as seamless is really difficult. I mean, even though we're pretty far along in technology these days, but even still, there's some places that don't, or some films that don't do it as well. But I think that you guys really did it really effectively, because I could not tell with the eyes moving as they were that it wasn't practical, that it was actually digital. It looked really, really well. It was really, really good.
Oh, awesome.
So kudos to that for you guys.
Sweet. I'm trying to do less visual effects and more editing, but I think, as an editor who can do visual effects, or at least knows a lot about it, I found it helpful. At least like compositing is like my favorite part of visual effects, where you basically are doing a magic trick. You're like you're not necessarily creating these like giant fire effects or dragons or whatever. You're just trying to make something look as real as possible and hide whatever, hide the entrails, behind it, which is really fun. So yeah, I really like doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're heavy on visual effects. I mean, I watched Kid Gambled today.
Oh wow.
And it's also quite heavy like on visual effects. So what advice would you have for a director who haven't really who doesn't have any experience with working with visual effects, but could use this kind of enhancement on his project?
Totally. Well, thank you guys for watching that, by the way. That's like super cool, and that's awesome. It's just about being realistic depending on the director, if you have some technical know-how, I would recommend going on YouTube and just learning even just a little bit. Like Anna is the director that I respect the most, I would say, in terms of her ability to just like want to always learn about every department. And she always wants to learn, how the special effects are being made, or she wants to learn how the production designer is going to put fake wallpaper in the house, or she wants to learn how we're going to do this eye replacement. And so, I think it's really important to just be open to that kind of stuff as a director. And, I learned After Effects, I learned it in film school, but in film school, we literally just watched YouTube tutorials. It was just the teacher putting that on. And the teacher was a good compositor, but it was just easier to just watch like Video Copilot or whatever tutorials.
Film Riot.
So I would recommend exactly. And so a Film Riot, yeah, exactly. And so I think I would recommend watching tutorials online. Even something really simple, can go a long way. And then also just knowing how, not to bite off too much. Like I get hit up for visual effects a lot of the times where it's just like they want to do like the craziest Marvel level VFX, and it's like you have to know what your limit is. I mean, that's just the thing with film in general, is like you always need to keep it simple, within your budget, all of that stuff. And I think people tend to like shoot a little too high sometimes with visual effects.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's cool stuff where it's like, directors might be really into learning about David Fincher or Bong Joon-ho, who like their editors are really good at like split screen comping and like doing simple things like that, where you can combine the two performances in one take. And that could be a cool entry point for a director to learn about visual effects, because I feel like that's like a more performance oriented thing for actors.
On that aspect, do you use morph cuts?
I never really use the morph cut because I find that it like kind of glitches a little bit. And then also if you're doing an offline edit and then you bring it online, like sometimes the morph doesn't quite translate. But I'll do stuff like that in either Premiere or After Effects. In Appendage, we tried doing it, and actually it didn't work out. But I was on another movie recently, the short film, that we used a lot of fading and things where the audience isn't looking there and stuff to try and combine performances. But have you had luck with morph cuts?
Actually, I had. Nice. Short film I edited last year, I used them in quite a different way than you would expect, I think, because I didn't use it to connect like two different takes. We had a take where an actor like delivered a really good take, but he stumbled on one word. So what I did was just basically I removed like 3 frames from the middle of it, and then used morph cuts to hide the jump cut, and it actually worked. You can't
That's
see
amazing.
the difference. You can't say you can't see any like this weird thing that sometimes happen when you use morph. Yeah, exactly. You can't see any morphing. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, the doc that I used. That's not even like a right English way to speak. In the doc that I worked on, I used it a couple times because, people getting in front of a camera, especially within a documentary setting, when they're not used to being in front of the camera, people tend to speak not right. As I'm speaking not right. So, and I use it in that way where I was basically kind of Frankensteining people. And sometimes I couldn't cover the edits of those conversations or those lines, and then so I would use the morph cut, and it just in the same way that Peter used it, where it was just like just enough, where it was just like just one word or just a bridge enough, where it was quick enough that I could do it. But even then, it was kind of something that the stars that aligned, and luckily their face was in the same position, or their eyes were just a little bit off, where the morph cut would still be able to hide it, so it wouldn't be, if I had just let it a jump cut, you could see it, but with the morph, it made it that much easier. But also just, it was enough that I couldn't just do a little like dissolve in it either. But yeah, beyond that though, I don't know, I haven't used it much more than that, or within my like paid work really.
I used it actually 2 weeks ago on a corporate video as well. And in this case, I could make it work for face. For face it worked, but because the girl had like a striped shirt, you could see the morphing on the shirt. So what I did was actually like, just without using After Effects, I just copied that layer and just used masking on that lower part of the image.
Oh, that's pretty
and it
brilliant.
worked.
That's awesome. Isn't that amazing? You can just do all that inside Premiere.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy what you can do now. I didn't even know that Premiere had masking until like during the pandemic. I learned that on something I was working on, and it's like such a game changer. It's insane. And now it also you can also track the mask too, which I didn't realize. It's like it's just crazy.
Yeah, although like a native tracking in Premiere Pro, I find it not to be so good, to be honest. Like it's quite slow. But when you like use dynamic linking with After Effects and use Mocha plugin, right, in After Effects, then you're like there are no limits to how accurate, how well you can track something.
Exactly.
I actually used I did a commercial not too long ago, and I just did like a simple color pass on it where the footage was a little bit too dark, and I just tracked the matte, like I just brightened it up and then just tracked it as the car like zoomed out of frame. And obviously with that, because it's kind of so vague anyway, where you're kind of, if you're looking at it, you can pick it up, or if you've seen the original footage. But yeah, beyond that, I would definitely just use like After Effects or something stronger than what Premiere has. But like you said, like Premiere is, every iteration, it gets better and better, where it's like, okay, well, now do I want to even use After Effects? But I think that program is so deep anyway that I don't think there will ever be a time where we won't be able to use it.
Not possible to replace it, but the end goal is probably to like kind of like merge these programs into one platform. I mean, it's already an ecosystem, so
yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
I think one of the strongest aspects of Appendage is actually sound design. So
nice.
I think it's really good. Were you involved in that like sound editing process as well? I mean, for example, like it's just this moment where Eric's character just turns his head and delivers the word original, right? And there is a slight whoosh in that pause moment, right? Which like
there is.
Yeah, and like things like that are brilliant. So I was wondering how, to what extent you were involved in that process as well.
Totally. We do a lot of sound design, even from the very first cut. I think it's really important. I actually, Anna cut together like storyboards of the movie, or she made storyboards of the movie before we made it. And we did one of the scenes, we like took pictures and put it all into Premiere and cut it together. And I collected a bunch of sound effects while doing that we ended up putting into the movie, including that whoosh and many other sound effects. And so a lot of it I've learned, after reading the script. It's kind of fun as the editor to go and start finding some sounds, because I feel like it's so hard to watch a rough cut where the sounds aren't there, or you're not even just trying something. And so that was something that we've been playing with early on. I think in the first or second cut, we added that whoosh. And then there's also a great sound effect that Anna had a great idea of when he like turns in his chair, like there's like a scraping noise of his chair on the ground, and as like a way to indicate like to how the lead actress kind of feels about Eric's character. And so that was something we incorporated pretty early on too. But yeah, sound is like so huge. I really try and like, before a director ever sees a cut, always making sure that everything feels smooth and there's no like harsh sound edits. I feel like sometimes that can happen even with dialogue and things like that. And sound is just, I really tried to do a lot of it in Premiere. And then we brought in Charles Moody, who did the sound design and the sound mix. And he, built on top of a lot of the stuff that we were working with, which was fun. But yeah, sound is huge, especially in horror too. Like something that, Anna and I watched, like Hereditary, which is like such a great example of how to use sound in a horror film, to like enhance scares, but also just create a mood. And The Conjuring is another example, very different example, but another example that we watched just for the sound design in particular. And so a lot of that stuff we were, trying to nail those scares also, which can be so hard to do in the edit, because like so much of that is just in the sound and the pacing of the edit. And, do you have a loud boom sound, during the jump scare, or do you let just the diegetic noise work, or is it too cheap? Is it not cheap enough? Or there's so many delicate balances there, and so that was something we went pretty back and forth on, I would say.
So you just mentioned Hereditary and The Conjuring. What did you guys have in mind when you were thinking of Appendage? Like, what movies inspired you in your edit, and maybe even like writing the script for that?
I mean, Anna would have to attest to the script phase. I think she was. I remember, but for the edit, we looked at Beetlejuice, which is like a fun sort of B horror, but also like a little elevated and very tasteful, I would say. We looked at that. We looked at The Conjuring for the scares and the pace, and then Hereditary for the sound design as well. I'm trying to think what else we watched. I feel like those were the main things, I believe. Yeah, I think so. But Anna has another feature that is hopefully happening later this year, and so we've been watching a lot of horror films for that as well, and so we I don't know, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and we're constantly thinking about tone, and she's really good at nailing, I think, that balance of fun but still scary kind of thing.
Yeah, will you edit the feature?
I hope so. We'll see. Okay. We'll see. Nothing is set in stone, obviously, yet, but I certainly hope so.
That's cool.
Great.
That's cool.
Which is cool. And then Appendage is getting turned into a feature also. Which is very exciting. And so I hope to be part of it. We'll see. But yeah, Hulu is turning it into an original film.
Oh wow!
That's
Congratulations!
Great. Cool. I've heard about it. I mean, I've seen Anna's interview with Sundance host. Yeah,
nice.
I mean, it's very good for you guys. So I'm happy for you. Really, like
thank you.
That's a huge opportunity. So yeah,
it's the dream, to make a short, get it turned into a feature. So that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although it's also something I guess she must have been ready for, because it's. When you get this window of opportunity, when someone wants to take the project to another level, you have to have something in your drawer, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I think, she's always thinking, I think when she originally pitched this idea, because the movie was made with 20th Digital Studios and Hulu as a part of Bite Size Halloween. Mm-hmm. So it's on Hulu. And so I think when she was pitching ideas, they were like, encouraging her to come up with ideas that could be turned into a feature. Okay. And so this was the one that they picked. And so she was definitely, she had some thoughts. And then the people at the producers that we work with at 20th Digital Studios also had some ideas about how to turn it into a feature. And so it's been a good collaboration.
Okay.
Cool.
I wanted to touch on briefly on one specific shot from Appendage. If I may. So there is this insert shot, this cutaway to a knife when she, spoiler alert, chops down, the thing, the appendage, right? So, and I was wondering, like, was it in the original footage, or was it something that you added later, or you figure out you would need something like that later? I'm just wondering, because very often these cutaways are something that is being added later in post. I mean, later in post, there is decision, okay, we need something extra to make this sequence work. So how was it?
They shot that on the day of. That was in the storyboards. It was definitely a shot where I think Anna was like, because I remember we were talking about tonally, like it's sort of suddenly, it's like, oh, we're in a Quentin Tarantino movie, or it's like,
exactly,
it has like that very like, it's like a tongue-in-cheek kind of shot. And our cinematographer Powell does a lot of horror features, and so he was like so excited by that shot. It was really funny. It was actually, it was so hard. I remember on set there were so many, and even looking through the footage, there's so many takes of them just raising the knife. Oh, it's out of focus. Raising the knife. Oh, it looks fake, or whatever. It moves around.
Yeah, it wibbles too much. I get it. That's why I was wondering, because like this, I can say that this shot is so well designed, it's so like so well. You can see that there is a lot of thinking going into that, and like immediately when I saw it, I was like, Tarantino. so, so yeah,
That's funny.
It's really good. So
we definitely played around with like, should we cut this shot? You know, is it too much? Is it too like silly kind of thing? And I think, you know, that was a
too
discussion.
stylistic.
And then exactly. But we ended up keeping it, you know, because it's the appendage is saying at the time, the appendage is saying like, you should kill yourself and like all this like really intense stuff. And so it's like, is it too much to cut to like this silly shot, or is it like the perfect, you know, humor that we need right now, you know, kind of thing.
I think it was perfect humor.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
Yeah, the
Cool.
scene, like, it gives lives to the scene, to that moment, I think. So, yeah, well done on that. Like, congrats to both you and Anna.
Man.
And other people involved in that process, like cinematographer. Yeah, like this shot really, like, you know, it really grabbed my attention. That's why I had to ask about it.
Oh man, well thank you for noticing. That's really cool.
It would be weird if that wasn't in there, and just
right.
having that kind of makes it that much. I would say flawless. It makes Appendage flawless because it's like every shot is like deliberate. Every shot has its place, and it makes it that much more enjoyable. Because I don't know, even thinking about like, is this shot too silly? When you've got this appendage growing out of the side of your main character, is kind of like, well, we've kind of gone far, so it's not going to be.
That's really funny. Yeah, that makes sense. We could have, you know, maybe we could have even gone sillier. Who knows? But that's funny. I love that. You know, Anna really planned every single shot in the movie. As an editor, I don't want to say lucky, but I got the job was a lot easier for me on this movie because she just like storyboarded the hell out of it, and she knew the tone of every single shot and all of that stuff. And so it was really just like, you know, cutting it to the boards and then, you know, a little bit of moving things around and stuff. But it really came together so quickly because she had figured out all of these moments beforehand, which was really nice.
That's great.
And I'm glad that the tone comes across. You know, a couple people have been like, oh, it doesn't know if it wants to be a horror film or a comedy film. And it's like, haven't you ever seen horror or comedy? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. But anyways, it's a fun blend for sure.
Yeah. Do you know Jim Cummings?
Yes, I know his. I've seen Thunder Road, the short and the feature.
He always says that make jokes in your films, or people will make jokes of your films, or something like that. Something along these lines. So I think like any kind of genre, like, can only benefit from having jokes. You know, spread throughout. Yeah.
Exactly. Even like really serious films, like even just rewatching Hereditary, like there's some humor in that movie, and like I think it you know, you can't it's never good to be too serious, you know. I think it's always important to have some levity.
Yeah, I think actually the biggest drama is like comes from how funny sometimes life is, right? So from these moments where you don't know either you should cry or laugh. These are the most dramatic moments, in my opinion. Yeah,
the truth can be so ridiculous that it's hilarious, and then life can be very harsh, and all you can really do is laugh about it. And I guess it's nice when that's reflected in films.
I'd like to ask you about either you have something like imposter syndrome sometimes, but I guess it's better to ask you either you have an appendage sometimes.
Oh, of course. Of course. Do you want to see? No. I think, of course, that was part of the reason why I was like, when Anna wrote the script, I was like, holy shit, like, this is so amazing. I relate to the movie so much, you know, because nowadays, I don't know, it's just, as someone with a lot of anxiety in general about social anxiety or professional anxiety or whatever, we all have that voice in our head. And I certainly do of being like, why did you say that? Or why didn't you say that? Or you could have done this better or whatever, you know? So yes, I feel like I definitely have an appendage. How about you guys?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Just like it to you, man.
Yeah. I mean, we were looking at your IMDb, and you know the style and amount of work that you've done it runs the gamut. You know, you got features of shorts, of narrative, and you've got documentaries, and then also episodic television. And even with that, I mean, we could, at this point, I mean, we could only dream of getting on stuff like that. And considering where we are, like you're obviously closer to ground zero of those, of that industry, whereas we're like off in Europe, which, it makes it a little bit more complicated, obviously, with us being remote. And as I'm getting older, I'm like, every time I'm working on a project and stuff, I'm always having imposter syndrome where it's like, okay, this is going to get away from me. And then they're just going to know that I'm just not good enough. And it doesn't even matter if it's like a corporate commercial or like some other thing, or, okay, we got to do a turnaround in 3 days. Can you figure this out? And it's just like, it doesn't even have to be that complicated, but even so, it's like my appendage is like, you fucking idiot. You don't know what you're doing. You didn't even go to school for this and stuff. And then, but yeah, so, I mean, I don't think you could be maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't think you can be an editor or even an artist without having an appendage.
Exactly. If you don't, then it's like, how could you, then your first cut is done. You're like, oh, okay, this is perfect. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I watch the first cut, especially with like a little bit of distance, my appendage is just, my shirt is rattling. It's yelling at me so much, being like, what the hell is this? It's always good to keep that in check. It's good. That's why I like the metaphor of the movie. It's not about getting rid of your appendage, it's about learning to live with it, and learning that those thoughts aren't going to necessarily go away, but how can you manage them? And, maybe there's some good in that as well. In like, being really self-critical. I think sometimes, I've worked with certain directors, especially when I was younger, where it's just like, and I think I even had, I did this where I just thought that everything I made was great and that it was just going to be awesome and everyone was going to care and that, all these choices were really important. And then, you kind of realize that it's good to be self-critical and it's good to, it could always be better. You know what I mean? And so having that appendage, the voice in your head pushing you, I think can be a positive thing.
Having that appendage kind of makes you humble, or it puts you in a mind state where it's like, okay, I'm not going to believe my own hype because somebody, and even we've talked about it before, Peter and I, in other episodes, where it's like, as an editor, you're trying to help somebody else realize their vision. And so all these things that you're like, this is the best thing ever. Well, how can you not realize my genius on this? And it's like, well, just got to realize that this isn't your story. You're helping somebody else realize their story and then kind of taking the back seat to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Exactly.
So
I feel like as an editor, you have to be so humble. Because it's just about like, I think when I first got started out, even up until probably recently, like I would put together a first edit and be like, this is fucking good. The director's going to love it. It's going to be awesome. Like, and then, you get humbled every time when the director comes in and is like, okay, this is a good start. Let's, rework this whole scene and that scene. And then, and it's about enjoying the process and learning from what they're trying to do. And you learn, the story they're trying to tell, the style in which they're trying to tell it, the pacing. I've learned so much about, just like the way that Anna paces her movies versus, I just worked with another director on a short film that also had Eric Roberts in it. But, totally different style of pacing, much slower, but like still, great, but just very different. And so it's just, it's always humbling to learn how to work with different people. And that's why I love editing, I think.
So kind of going back to what, not necessarily about having an appendage, but, like I was talking about before with all the credits that you have, and you had kind of mentioned it before about like kind of learning from, you working on one thing that's very different and then you work on something else that's also different. And because you've worked on these documentaries, short films, episodic television, how have those informed you as an editor, or how have those different projects made you a better editor?
The biggest thing I've taken away from that, because like you talk about like the episodic TV, I worked on a show for Nickelodeon, a game show during the pandemic, and every episode had to be, a certain length. And the show was very regimented. It was almost like Mad Libs. Like it was just like, insert joke, insert, this thing, insert that thing. And it really taught me clarity, like just being quick and swift with your edits. What does the audience need to know, and how quickly or not quickly do we need to show that? And I think it just really worked that muscle. I think the episodic really helped with that, and the documentary, really helped, I guess, with keeping the audience engaged. In a story, it can be hard sometimes in documentary. You have, I'm sure, as there can be, parts of the story that are a little slower than others, or not slower, and it's just about using editing to keep it alive. Dramatic cut to black, or let's put a cool graphic in here, or let's cut to this emotional moment here, where this isn't necessarily about this moment, but we can kind of link the two so that it feels emotional. I don't know. I guess that's kind of a general answer, but the main thing I would say is clarity. For sure. And that's just like, when I first started editing, when I was younger, I'd be like, let's leave the shot on, let's leave this wide shot, this beautiful wide shot for 20 seconds, because it's just a beautiful wide shot and the audience can kind of think about things or whatever. And now I'm like, 3 seconds, the audience gets it. Let's cut on, let's move to the next thing, And so I think, I just watched, they did a screening of Fast Times at Ridgemont High in Los Angeles a couple nights ago, and we went, and it was moderated by P.T. Anderson, which was really cool. And Wow. He was just talking about how the movie is 93 minutes long, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and it's like there's like 5 or 6 different storylines being interspliced throughout this thing, and it's a 93-minute movie. I mean, how is that even possible? It's just like it moves exactly how as quick as it should, and. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I feel like I've taken away. I feel like a lot of editors can struggle with and I've definitely struggled with how long do we pace this out for, kind of thing.
Pacing is huge, but I also think it's like it's also a skill a director needs to know, right? A clarity, as you said. Like one of the concepts that I really enjoyed from the book that I really like, David Mamet's book on directing film.
Oh yeah.
The main concept in that book is actually clarity, like with your shots. Like he teaches like his students like, okay, what do we need to get from this moment to progress the story? And that's the only thing you have to frame. That's the only thing you have to frame and intercut with another shot to get the story forward. You don't need, extra background action and things like that. The true filmmaking lies in juxtaposition of shots. And for it to work, you have to have clarity in those images, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about creating tension between two different things. And if you leave a shot too long, or, you're cutting between, I think in the book, they use an example of like a student in their desk and then cutting to a clock on the wall. I think it's been a long time since I've read that book. Yeah. And it's like, cutting between those things and the pacing in which you do it and all of that stuff can really just add. So you know exactly that student wants to get out of that classroom as quick as possible, and the time, the way you cut it together, it could be that the time's going really slow, or that the time is actually going really fast, or it's kind of a fun example. But cutting suddenly to a shot of like the window outside in the middle of that inner exchange might not necessarily, it might be a really beautiful shot, but it might have nothing to do with the story, and it might distract from the tension that you're building and things like that. And so, yeah, it's fun to analyze, I guess, like how every single shot is going to make the audience feel in these moments.
Here comes the knife shot again, like clarity, top level, right?
The knife shot.
The knife shot once again. The knife shot once again, yeah. Like it's a perfect example. Yeah.
I was just trying to think if there's anything we actually cut from the film, but I can't think of anything. I think it was, it was a lot of like, when she's working at her desk, there was a lot more stuff there of like, what is she drawing? Like right before the appendage pops out, she's working at her desk and she has that pain, but there's a bunch of stuff on her, she's drawing like different dresses and she's screwing it up and all these things. And it's like, maybe a first cut could have included that, but I think me and Anna kind of talked about it and we were like, no, let's compress that moment to get exactly what you need. We don't need to focus on the different types of dresses that she's drawing or whatever, because that just doesn't have to do with it. It takes away from the tension.
You guys saved so much time by not overshooting a lot of stuff as well, it sounds like, considering how Anna had basically mapped it out.
On top of also, being a writer-director, she's really, really good at logistics and knowing that she's not going to bite off more than she could chew. And a lot of it also is because it was storyboarded, which helped. You can kind of see which shots you might not need or which ones are extraneous. And then because the special effects, we were doing that. We actually shot it in our house, the movie. This was the DIT room. But we have a very tiny house, and it was a struggle to shoot. And because of COVID, that really slowed us down. And the special effects application took a really long time. And so it was like, I think they got like 35 shots in that day, and they just like planned it to a T. And it's tricky because 35 shots is a lot of shots, but people have gotten more. But with the special effects application and with the COVID testing and with all this other stuff that we had to deal with, it was a stretch. We went an hour over that day, but it was overall pretty good. But then because I was editing it, I kind of took a step away when we were shooting for the most part, and was like playing around on After Effects with the roto brush and stuff while they were filming, which was fun too. Just so like, I think it got everybody really excited. Like Rachel, like the lead actress, came in and she was like, "Oh my God, like that looks so crazy." And I think, the whole crew got really excited when that happened. And so, it can be fun to edit and do visual effects and that kind of stuff while you're on set, just for the morale.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something that you've done on other projects as well? Kind of like edit at the same time or on set or close to set?
I actually haven't, but I think, on Anna's feature, we were talking about if I get to do it, hopefully that would be the idea, is that I would be either editing on set or close to set. But I remember reading that Jim Cummings actually did that on Thunder Road. His editor was like in the
Brian
in the
Venucci,
house. Yeah. I feel like that's super helpful, and it's like a cool way to know if something's working like immediately. Just seeing a cut work like suddenly just gets me like, oh, okay, the movie's gonna work. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. There's something about that, even just putting it together or however which way. Like I think it helps get the morale up for everyone, and it helps everyone kind of understand, I think, the movie that you're trying to make, which is really cool. And we screened dailies at night, which was fun. It ended up just being me, Anna, and our cinematographer. But it's like a fun way to kind of look back and be like, okay, this could work with that, or that could work with this. And then Anna and Powell are talking about, different ideas too. And it's just like a really fun way to I guess celebrate the work that you're doing and also try and get better. Yeah.
I have to remember about it, but this moral aspect.
It's really fun to see everyone get excited, because you have these grips and these gaffers, and they work on so many different movies. And even we had a really great first assistant editor on this project, and he works on so many different things, and it's like, how am I going to get him excited about this, and how are as the producers and Anna as the director, like how is the crew going to get excited about this? And so it's always fun to try and keep that in mind, because these guys and gals just see so many different movies, and it's just, you can get jaded really fast. And so it's fun to try and if you make the grip and gaffer laugh, then the scene's hopefully working.
Even when I was working on that documentary, unfortunately we didn't have very good communication with our subjects, and because of that they weren't as invested. And so in a way, like once we showed them like, here's the scenes that we're cutting together, then it was like, oh, this is like an actual film. Like, it's not just you guys talking to us about like, we're going to make a movie. It's like, oh, this is going to actually become something. And then, even with that, like you can see the change in people as they see like, oh, this is a reality, or it's becoming a reality.
That's like the coolest part of like having digital and Premiere and all this stuff, is like you can quickly put all of that stuff together, and so people can see and share it with them. But yeah, that stuff is like, it's so invaluable. I don't know. I couldn't imagine not having that, especially with documentary, because it's just, there's a lot of filming, I feel like, and then these usually the subjects don't know anything about movies, or they might not, and so it's I would imagine it'd be really helpful.
And
Definitely.
these days, the workflows are just crazy. Like with the, I don't know if you've heard about the camera to cloud workflow from Frame.io. That's something
We
I'm
tried to
excited
use
about. You tried to use it. That's awesome.
We couldn't afford it.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
it does require extra gear at this moment, at least.
Yeah.
That is not
So
cheap, but yeah.
Exactly. The studio really wanted us to use it, and I totally get why, and I think it's really cool. But we ended up getting a different kind of. You needed like a special Teradek, I guess, to put on the camera, and that Teradek. There's only a few of them, and so it was really expensive. But we got a different Teradek that just it live streamed the video feed on a Zoom channel, so the studio heads could log in and see what was being filmed. But my favorite part was that the whole crew could just on their phone have a monitor. Everyone just joined the Zoom channel, so that way the production designer now had her own monitor, the gaffer had his own monitor, and we didn't need to rent. All we just needed to rent was a Teradek, and that was like the coolest unexpected thing that we didn't realize would ever happen, and now I want it on every set, basically.
That's
was
amazing.
I love this. I love this one. I love this one.
Isn't that crazy? It's like so like that was like a benefit of COVID, I would say. But yeah, it's like
kind of
so crazy. Yeah, kind of. Having that remote environment, yeah, it was just crazy. It was very cool.
I guess we're almost ready to sum it up. I mean, I don't want to keep you for too long. So, but one question that we always like to ask is about your favorite filmmaking or editing book, if you have one, of course.
Book.
Yeah.
No pressure.
You know, there's obviously In the Blink of an Eye, but I'm going to recommend a book that's not about filmmaking, but it's about writing. And I think it's been the most helpful. It's a book by Haruki Murakami, the Japanese writer, called What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. And it's a book about his, he runs a lot. And he obviously writes a lot of novels. And it's just about his his schedule throughout the day and how he manages writing and how he lets go and goes on a run. He makes time for himself to do that every day. And then he comes back to whatever writing he's doing, or he does something else. But I guess it's like a really peaceful way of looking at the creative process. Not putting so much pressure on yourself to work, 12 grueling hours and not getting up or doing anything else. I guess it was just like a really peaceful way to look at it, in a low pressure way. And also he talks about writing his first novel while he also had a full-time job. And so, I think that can be really inspiring, in general, because most of us have to work really, we work on the side and then we do these editing jobs for free or whatever. And so it can be it can be a huge challenge mentally and physically to do both. And so I think, he talks about it in a helpful, nice way.
That's perfect. So, I really appreciate that you hesitated from that temptation of recommending In the Blink of an Eye, because In the Blink of an Eye, of course, is like a brilliant book, but also it's the most obvious choice. So thank you for not going with the obvious.
So then, how can I ask how does that book that you just described, how has that informed you in your work?
I think for me, it's been about learning when to step away and take time to just go on a run and stop thinking about the editing choices I'm going to make, or stop getting so, anxious or about, the fact, I haven't had I really look forward to hopefully editing a full narrative feature. I've co-edited a few documentary features, but I've never done a feature from the ground up, and something that I hope to do really soon. But I would imagine the anxiety of it's not done yet, because it's going to take 10 weeks to put together that first edit, or however many weeks, or and I think on this television show I struggle with that, where it was just it was so much footage. There's a lot of green screen, a lot of multicam stuff, and it's just how could I wake up every day and not just go straight to my computer? You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely something where I was like, no, like I should, I'm trying to meditate in the morning, or I'm trying to like, stretch or do something for myself. And I think the book for me was like a nice way of looking at that, or it taught me that it's okay to do that. Here's this novelist that I really respect, and he takes like an hour or two out of his day every single day to just go on a run and not think about anything other than just run and maybe listen to some music or something. And I guess it's been it's a peaceful way of looking at your work. So I think we have a tendency. I try. I mean, I'm not like a great runner. I do like a run walk, kind of thing. I'm like, I guess the typical like not athletic editor or whatever. But I think, it's a nice way to get outside and do something for myself. And then I can come back to whatever I'm doing with fresh eyes, which is really nice. But it's so hard when you have this insurmountable amount of work in front of you. And it's just like, how are you going to tackle it? I think it was like Kurosawa who said, if you're climbing a mountain, just look at what's in front of you. Like, don't look up at the whole mountain.
As editors, we excel at where there are many steps in it where we can't just be like thinking of it all at once, like super focus on the whole thing at once, where we got to be like, all right, I got to look at the footage, I got to see which is the best, and then after that I'm going to do this and then this, and it's got to be that step, or else we're going to die. Or our heads will explode.
Or else you're just going to have like, the universe will end. It'll just be, it's game over.
So
also, I think like the best creative ideas actually come to you when you're on a break, usually, not when you're actually working on the timeline, right? But when you're having the time off and, I don't know, just having a walk or washing dishes or things like that. That's when your subconscious mind sometimes like pushes the idea towards you, and like
exactly. It's all about distance. It's like suddenly you're looking at it with fresh eyes, and it's like that's like the biggest thing as an editor, like not getting too used to the way something is playing or something like that. Like that can be such a challenge, whether it's like, okay, should I show it to somebody so that they can tell me that it's pacing, they don't understand the pacing, or or is it just about taking a walk and taking, if you can take the weekend off and not look at the cut or something like that, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. That can, that's always something that can be really important to seeing it with a fresh perspective, as opposed to like working on it every single day. And then it's like, you don't even know where you are or what's going on. And then, I feel like I've done that. And then the scene's cut too fast. And then someone who's not familiar with the story can come in and be like, whoa, what's going on? And so it can be, that can be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it's something that being too close to an edit, definitely something like that, where it's interesting how you said perspective, but also we had talked with Jacob Bricka, who's a big documentarian, and and he made a really good point about how, like you said, there's the perspective, your perspective of stepping away and then coming back to it and you have fresh eyes, but then also the perspective of you watching it with somebody else, and you have a different perspective of that, because then you're kind of self-conscious about what they're picking up on, and then you're also seeing it in that same perspective, and you're like, oh, now I know this isn't working right.
It's like those memes you've seen, or I don't know if you guys have seen those memes of like, when you listen to Spotify on your own, and it's like somebody like enjoying themselves, and it's like when you're showing your friends your Spotify music and the person's like biting their nails, like, is my friend gonna like this music? And it's sort of like that with editing. It's like when you show it to somebody, suddenly you're like you said, so self-conscious, and you're like, shit, is it working? Is it not? Or like it suddenly jumps out at you and you can read the room and you realize that it's not working, or you realize that it is, and so that can be really helpful. But it's like, you got to save those moments so you don't, you can only show so many people.
Right.
So,
There was one thing also, which I don't know if you guys experienced this, but I mean, with a short or any other projects that you've worked on, is that being cognizant of knowing the stuff that you cut out and how it influences the story. And even though, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but when I was doing the Holding These Moments documentary, I had to remind the director, like, okay, we've cut this scene, but we've cut out a bunch of stuff. And now we have to remember that stuff isn't there anymore. And so it's like, we can't reference that. Like the audience doesn't know that. We know that, but we have to cut it so that the audience knows what's going on without that thing that we just cut out, and like having that perspective and like realizing that.
Yeah, that could be a really tricky balance of like, especially with bigger projects where you have to cut a whole scene, but then it's like, well, shit, we needed that nugget of, when they said this. And so how are we gonna, that's a huge challenge. I feel like, I think on Appendage now, I am remembering there was some dialogue between her and Eric that we did cut, but it was all, it didn't add to the story. It was like we realized that we could get to it faster if we could cut it. It wasn't anything too revealing, but I feel like that could be a challenge. Like with what you're saying about having to cut a whole scene, then it's like, okay, do you like just use voiceover, or do you repurpose those lines as voiceover, or is there something else? Or I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where
it's like leaving those crumbs where it's like, we cut this out and there's a little remnant of it over here it makes sense to us because we know about the cut off piece, but anybody else who sees it is going to be like, why is this clown here now? And it's like, I don't know, well, we know because this happened, but it's like realizing that, and then how much that changes the story, because then once you start cutting things out, you're like, okay, we're making it simpler, but now does it make more sense this way, or does it not make more sense, or
is it too confusing? Exactly.
All right, so what's next for you?
Well, right now, hopefully editing some features soon, we'll see, and then I'm going to direct a short and then I'm going to direct a short film next month, which will be fun, and then that's what's going on.
Is it yours? Is it your short, or for someone else?
It's I wrote it and directed it. Anna is producing it, and so is Matthew, who also produced Appendage. It's like a similar crew as Appendage, except Anna and I are, I guess, switching for just the time being.
Yeah.
But that'll be a fun one. It's a comedy, which will be cool.
Nice.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. So where do we follow you?
Instagram, I would say. My Instagram is, I'll send it to you guys.
Okay, that was awesome. One of my favorite tips he gave was about using Teradek, the wireless video feed transmitter, to actually feed Zoom channels so that everyone on the set can actually like access, this Zoom link and have a look at the camera feed. How cool is that?
Like their own little monitor. I never even thought that was a thing, but it makes perfect sense now.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm gonna do a short film or something like that one day, I'm definitely using it. And I found it very inspiring how, editing on set can have an effect on people's morals.
Yeah, people seeing what they're actually working on and making it real, realizing that, this is something that we're working on, really boosts the morale of people on the set. I thought that it was funny that we were like, so how's your relationship with the director? And he's like, oh yeah, we're married. I thought that was funny because we had all these questions that we were going to be like, oh, the synergy of your relationship, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh yeah, we're married for like 4 years now. So I was like, okay, well, there goes all of those questions that we had. That was funny. And then I thought also, which was really neat, we usually ask the question of what is a good film book that you recommend or that inspires you, and he kind of flipped the script on us and was like, well, this isn't really a film book, but it's about kind of an inspiration in the way that this novelist, Japanese novelist, writes. And so it wasn't necessarily a film book, but it was something that inspired him within his own work as a storyteller, which really didn't have to be rooted in filmmaking and all, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this aspect of synergy, right? In the first episode of the podcast, actually. And I think, once again, writers are, researching their craft, what they do, is actually a great synergy for any editor. I really believe that. So hearing him recommending that book, I was like, yeah, definitely, that's something that can have a huge effect on how you work as an editor.
I mean, we'll probably put the link in the description too, so
of course, we will
look for that also. I hope you enjoyed the episode, everybody, and as always, shoot and edit.
Until next time, Shoot and dead like there is no tomorrow. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
If you like what you've heard, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you've listened to this on. Your reviews help more people discover this show. You can also follow us on Instagram. Just search for @CutToReveal and tell your friends.
And if you have any questions or comments, send them to podcast@cuttothepoint.com. And who knows, maybe we'll use them in the future episodes. And as we say around here, until the next time, shoot and edit like there is no tomorrow.